In today's episode, I want to re-examine the concept of being a microgym and hopefully reframe your thought process around growth, as I believe it leaves way too many of us vulnerable for when shit hits the fan. So get your calculator out today, kids, because today we're talking math, profit margins, and resisting growth when there's better options available. This is episode 7 of the What the Fuck Gym Talk Show. Welcome back, everybody. We got a short episode today, so little episode, little bottle. And we're going to be jamming today on a very unfortunate series of events that unfolded out of California earlier this week. Good. All right. I know you guys don't know what time of the day it is when I'm recording these, but it is not a socially acceptable time of the day to be drinking whiskey. Yeah, fuck it. All righty. So I've been using the term microgym for the past 5 years to broadly describe brick and mortar fitness facilities that I didn't believe fell into the typical Globo gym standard. These were typically boutique or retail or even warehouse type facilities that all kind of had similar common denominators. They were generally owner-operator type locations, meaning the owner worked in the business as the main operator, at least in the infancy stages of the business before it hits maturity. Microgyms typically may or may have not had aspirations to scale and grow to multiple locations, either via a franchise or license route. And in fact, I was even using the term microgym to classify actual franchisees or licensees. And I still consider them a part of the genre. But this very loose classification became quite popular, and amongst individuals talking about the fitness business scene, it became a part of the lexicon and lingo. And then eventually, myself and others just started using this term microgym to blanket describe anybody who's running any type of group brick and mortar fitness experience. However, as the industry has evolved, especially during COVID-palooza, I think it's really important that we reevaluate the term microgym. Now, I don't think the issue is with labeling everything from an Orange Theory Fitness to a CrossFit location a microgym. The issue is not placing enough emphasis on the characteristics that make these business models not only attractive, but really fucking lucrative. The fact that they're small. Because as it stands now, the majority of microgym owners are focused on one thing: growth, getting bigger, becoming larger than what they currently are. And it's just this default mindset that we all fall into because we've been told we're supposed to grow and scale our business. However, in the pursuit of growing our equipment line, expanding our membership base, adding more coaches, we are acting in a direct opposition to our actual superpower. Being lean with ample profit. That is our superpower. And what ends up happening to most of us? We fucking die. We go out of business on this Oregon Trail of growth-based success. Or maybe we survive the journey, but we end up jailing ourselves and handcuffing ourselves to this megatron of a business model that's overly complicated, expensive as hell, and actually far less profitable than the exact same company we had just a few versions earlier. Now, as a case study, let's take a look at the unfortunate news to come out of the West Coast earlier this week, the closure of San Francisco CrossFit. For those of you not in the CrossFit affiliate world, this business was considered the utopia, the ideal avatar of what any microgym owner should strive to create. They've been in business for over 15 years, humbly starting in a parking lot with nothing more than storage units to drag the equipment in and out of daily and canopy coverings to protect them from the elements. But these guys continued their pursuit of growth and eventually were able to move into a brick and mortar facility where they expanded their operations to 20 plus employees and over 700 members. It's a fucking gym owner's dream come true. But this week, an email was sent out announcing San Francisco CrossFit's imminent closure. The letter recapped their origin story in the parking lot, paid homage to their coaching staff, thanked their members for their support, but ultimately admitted that they had to close this bleeding business because it was too large to keep afloat during these times. The email stated that they had not been profitable since the closures in March, and the owners had been using their own personal savings to cover the gap between their massive expenses and their record low revenue. This giant in the microgym industry has fallen when some thought that they were too big to fail. But if we were to actually just sit back and we were to analyze this as outsiders without any official insight to their financial health, I think it would be a fair conclusion to assume that at some point they grew too big. We all know what profit margin is. Take your revenue, subtract your expenses, and then divide that number back by your revenue. That's your profit margin. Now, there is a sweet spot within every microgym's life cycle where they should probably stop focusing on growing and instead hit the pause button and look to refine and make their systems, their workflow, their client acquisition, and their retention more efficient, where they look to find creative ways to generate revenue without a crippling increase in expenses. Take a look at this example. This shows a business over a period of time and how their growth mission might have increased revenue, but their overall profit actually decreased. They end up building a monster of a business that requires so many moving parts to stay afloat that even a moderate disruption in revenue would send them into a tailspin. Now, I've got these three examples laid out here, and you can clearly see how in option one, we've got very low revenue, but very low expenses, and gives us a healthy profit margin for the fitness industry. It's obviously a low maintenance business. We have less than 100 members. It's in a small square footage location so that rent isn't too daunting. And the operation is pretty simple. The owner operator is probably doing the majority of the work with one part-time coach. This might not be the ideal scenario for most of you or what you want to grow, but for a lot of you, this is a great starting position and a very realistic starting position as you kick off this business. Now look at what happens as we go to the next model. The business has now grown to $30,000 in revenue. Expenses are just under 20. The profit is still strong, a very good 36% profit margin for the fitness industry, but we've essentially over doubled the membership. We've also found a larger building, and now we have 2 full-time coaches. Right here, this would be the spot where I would coach this particular microgym to probably hit the pause button on growth, make sure retention is in line, and let's find a better way to streamline additional revenue without having to grow this monster by adding in an enormous amount of staff, way too many expenses, adding a bunch of different programs that eventually turn you into something that's so big, if there was a pause in revenue, you would come crashing down. And in this very last example, you're able to clearly see now you've expanded to a $60,000 a month revenue with $53,000 in expenses. Your profit margin has been cut in over half because to make that much money per month costs a lot of money. You've doubled your membership base, you've almost tripled the amount of square footage you're leasing, and now you have a much bigger staff that you're responsible for. So obviously there's plenty of variables left out of these scenarios, but I wanted to give you a very high-level overview as to what these 3 stages of any microgym owner's growth could potentially look like. And at what point do you stop, hit the pause button on growth once you've got your retention dialed in, and sit there and refine the efficiency of your business versus constantly chasing a linear progression of revenue. And of course, I'm not ignorant to the fact of inflation and that it costs more to run a business in 10 years than it does today. But what I'm trying to drill home for you is this idea that growth is a constant state of the business, because it's not. And if you would allow it to become your constant state of business, you're bound to run into some big fucking problems down the road. And I'm also not saying that this is why San Francisco CrossFit threw in the towel. I'm not privy to any of that information or the intimate details of that business, but I think it's safe to say that having a lease in one of the most expensive commercial real estate markets in the country, combined with the massive membership base and expensive payroll, certainly contributed to turning their growth into a vulnerability. And while the purpose of this video is not to villainize growth, because growth is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, growth is 100% needed when you're in the early stages of your business and later on down the road during strategic times. But growth isn't predictable. Your expenses generally are. And just because you had a month of shitty sales or who knows, a global pandemic shows up, you're still responsible for the majority of the items on your balance sheet at the end of the month. But I view growth as a potential ticking time bomb when growth replaces your actual business mission. And your mission, regardless of what your business stands for, or how you plan to change the world with your product or service, should ultimately boil down to providing the founder, the owner, the lifestyle they want, doing the thing they love for a sustainable amount of time. That's all I've got for you guys today. Much love to the San Francisco CrossFit crew. Know the culture and the following you've created over the past decade will continue on in one way or another. Thanks for watching, everybody. And until I see you in the next episode, have a great fucking day.